couple years ago, I'm on my way home from the YMCA, and I am so excited because I have just signed my daughter up for this new event they're having, the cardboard regatta. This is totally in my daughter's wheelhouse. She loves making things like this. She once took our Amazon boxes and made a life-size electric guitar and a case, fully functioning. So this was going to be a piece of cake. Making a little boat, no problem. It wasn't until I got home and in my kitchen reading the flyer that I realized that this boat actually has to be functional. It has to carry an entire human across the length of the pool successfully. I tell my husband, let's just forget it. I mean, I had to look up regatta in the dictionary, so we're not exactly boat people. But he says, no, she's got this. She can do it. So we start collecting materials like kitty litter containers and milk jugs and refrigerator boxes, and the design process begins. My daughter, fresh off of learning about the scientific method, decides we need to make a prototype, a scale model. So she gets a Kleenex box and a couple water bottles, and she represents herself with a bright yellow golf ball. So we fill up the bathtub and we're all leaning over the edge as she sets it down. And at first it's going okay. And then the Kleenex box takes on water and it jettisons Captain Titleist to the seabed below. And I'm thinking, oh, this is not a good sign. But my husband says, no, it's just a misfire. We just need more duct tape. It's going to be fine. So they start designing. They take the coffee table and they put it in the middle of the living room and they've got it up on blocks and they're building and building. Eventually, it looks like an Amazon truck has blown up. But my husband, a videographer, decides that he wants to film the entire process. So he's got his gimbal out. He's doing like 180 views of the entire thing. And he's doing sit-down Q&As with her about her process. And it was at that moment from the kitchen that I realized definitively that I am a pessimist. All I could think is that if this boat sank, which I heard that they often do, that this footage was just going to be a reminder of her. It was going to make her feel like her little hobby was a waste of time. But for my husband and an eternal optimist, all life's boats will float. So he goes to the mailbox and he opens it, sure that there's going to be sweepstakes returns or tax returns. And I go and I'm just bracing myself for electric bills and jury duty. We see life differently. But they continue the process and the day of the race arrives. We carry the final product boat in. The place is crazy. They had a communal dinner beforehand, so there's kids running everywhere in their swimsuits with cookies running through their veins. It's wild. We take the boat to the dock and survey the others. Hers is blue. They've named it SS Bluey, and they've painted it turquoise, and it has a paper tube mask with a stuffed Bluey at the top. She's dressed in costume with a Bluey hat on, and she has a little tail sticking out of her life jacket. The other boats range everywhere from a very elaborate banana boat to a unchanged box that just says boat on the side. So I figured her odds were as good as any. So they start the first heat. And it's between this raft contraption that someone's made and then a box that has purple pool noodles glued on the side. And they both do fairly well, but I really can't pay attention to any of it because my daughter is standing there saying, that's not on the approved materials list. This is not fair. I'm like, it's just for fun. It's just for fun. The second heat was between the minimalist self-proclaimed boat and this pizza-themed boat. It was a father and son, and they both had chef's hats on, and they were using spatulas as oars. Everything went pretty well at first, and then the self-proclaimed boat started to sink, and the little boy decides in an act of self-preservation that he's just going to grab onto the pizza boat and let them drag him across the stage. And again, my daughter's like, you can't do that. You can't do that. That's not fair. You can't drag down your hub. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. This was clearly more than a race for her. She was so excited. So the third heat comes, and it's her and the banana boat. And the banana boat is manned by a preteen boy who is taking this as seriously as she is. They're both really into this. So my husband steadies the boat on the side as she gets in. And the referee says, 3, 2, 1, and let's go. And the boat immediately flips over, throwing her into the water. In the video footage, you can see the boat drifting to the side, and Zara, always the comedian, is doing the dead man's float. And the banana boat goes on to win slowly, but goes on to win, and she misses the entire thing. She's in a deck chair, just sobbing at this time. So 15 teary minutes later, we decide to turn to the restorative power ice. So we pile into our cars and we drive to Dairy Queen. And for the next 2 hours, we sit at these sticky umbrella tables and watch the footage on repeat over and over again. And Zara's just laughing finally. And we are discussing the pros and cons of V-shaped hulls like we are suddenly nautical experts. And this evening is floating somehow despite itself. And the next day we get a call from the Y director and she says that Zara has a trophy waiting for her at the front office. She has won the Titanic Award for the best sink.
Rain. The time. Are you not? You're my timer, right? Okay. Raise your hand. When you see her raise her hand, it means you got 4 minutes. She's just letting you know to talk a little faster. That's all the minutes. All right. Oh, that is so good. Tastes almost as good as cake. Listen, you might want to know about some upcoming events. In December, our self-awareness event will be held at Grand Junction Brewing uh, on 1189 East 181st Street in Westfield. Once you get rolling, it's easy. It's a straight stretch. But Once Upon a Time Storytelling Circle will meet the fourth Sunday of every month at 2:30 p.m. at Hamilton East Public Library, the Fishers Branch. It's hosted by our professional storytellers, Deborah Gully and Liza Hyatt. Wave at him, Dad. Okay. And if you're working on a folk tale, fairy tale, if you just want to come listen to some people make a fool of themselves, come on. Okay. We enjoy each other's company. But now, piece of cake or pie. You know, like what is it, the turducken? They got something like that along the same lines, except it's cake and pie. It don't appeal to me. I think my favorite cake is any chocolate cake you make, but my family loves German chocolate cake. And my youngest brother was in California back in the days when you couldn't call people until after 11 o'clock at night, because of the rates. And he had once wistfully said to my mother that he wanted how much he loved her German chocolate cake. So unbeknownst to him, she made a German chocolate cake. Buttermilk, the German chocolate, the pecans, a coconut, packaged that bad boy up in a box and shipped it. He got the note. But I'm this kind of person. I don't race to my mailbox because no good news comes to my mailbox unless I'm waiting on the check. He looked at that notice of the delivery and he paid it no mind. And he didn't have a phone. Like my father used to call his friends Bobby and Margaret at 3 o'clock in the morning, their time. And he would have to say to him, well, he doesn't live here. And when he finally talked to my mother, she told him she had sent him a cake. It had been so many months. She said, if you go pick it up, you need to just throw that away. All that effort for nothing. But I know this next teller's got a story. I'm gonna reach into this line. Come on down.
I'll be free now. Does that work? Should we just be taller and I'll see them with it?
Yeah, like level.
Like level?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to listen to her. You can pull the mic out. There we go. Good? All right. For my sister's milestone birthday, I knew exactly what she would want, something unexpected that she would love. Now, the tradition in our family is that the birthday child always got to choose what they wanted for the birthday treat for mom to make. And my sister always chose pineapple upside down cake. And while the cake itself was delicious, it was the making of this cake that we look forward to the most. And the star of the event was the Vitacraft 13.5-inch oil core skillet. My mother was the secretary for the top selling Vitacraft salesman in the state of Michigan. And this skillet was the crown jewel of the cookware line. So on my sister's birthday, my mom would pull the Vitacraft skillet out of her cupboard and she would gather all of the ingredients for the pineapple upside down cake. She would plug this skillet in to warm. And then she would begin to prepare the cake batter, pineapple cake batter, not vanilla. She would drain the pineapple juice from the can of pineapple rings. And then she would add that pineapple juice to the cake batter, which added even more to the pineapple deliciousness, of course. She got her into the water, and we would watch the yellow islands become a sea. And then quickly, because speed was very important at this point, brown sugar was sprinkled across the pan, and then arranged in a ring around the outside of the pan with just two rings going into the center. And then the bright red maraschino cherries, one in the center of every pineapple ring and one in between each pair of rings. This iconic formation in our minds made the cake taste even better. And then mom held the bowl of cake batter above the pan, laying at the top of the hill, and swiftly but carefully, she would dump the cake batter into the pan, somehow perfectly preserving the pineapple pattern. We were in awe. And the stainless steel lid went on the pan. The lid turned to vent the steam to go out, and the timer was set for 16 minutes exactly. And we watched the timer count down slowly. Mom prepared the pan for its important role that it was about to play. She boiled and sat it next to the smell of pineapple filled the kitchen, making the timer move even slower. And then at the stroke of 16, the lid came off of the pan. The cake batter had transformed into the surface of the moon. Its undulating waves looked plain and simple, but we knew the treasure that lay beneath. And then, the moment, we all held our breaths. Mom took that aluminum foil pizza pan. She laid it over top of a large circle. 2 oven mitts, she held it firmly. And with stick 3, 2, 1, she flipped that pan over, wiggled the handles, and it was time to see if the magic had happened once again. And there it was, the golden pineapple rings with their crispy brown sugar edges. It was the best birthday cake. My sister and I grew up and had children of our own. And my mom's journey through Alzheimer's and dementia made pineapple upside down cake a faded memory. But my mom, in her wisdom years before, had each of us girls put aside a cookware set on layaway, and we made our monthly payments. I wisely chose the 13-inch oil core skillet. For my sister's birthday that year, then I knew just what to do. I used my oil core skillet, and I made the perfect birthday cake for her.
So she lived 8 hours away. So I mailed it overnight to arrive the morning of her birthday. And she loved it. Now, the epilogue of this story is perhaps the sweetest piece of this story. My mother's dementia and Alzheimer's journey continued, and she went to assisted living. The realization that she was never going to return home was a hard one. So we gathered at the childhood home to go through her things to prepare her house to sell. Each of us choosing a few things that would become our own. And my sister, in my mother's cupboard, found the Vitacraft 13-inch oil core skillet that she pulled from that cupboard and made her own, where she continues to make the magic of pineapple upside down cake.
I know you just started truly listening to that recipe, right? And I saw the people in the audience just shaking their heads. That's how you do it. That's it. Thank you. That was a wonderful story. My mother and father, I remember my mother telling me a story about my dad. His favorite cake was a coconut cake. And the last cake I baked for him was a 7-day coconut cake. Now, my father made the mistake of coming home one day with a coconut cake that some other woman had made for him. My father was a bricklayer. So when he came in and brought the cake in and he went to go take his bath after coming home from work, my mother looked at that cake and she said she unwrapped that cake, and I was but a little toddler. She set that cake and me on the floor together. And when my father came out of his bath, anticipating cake for dessert, there was none to be had. And she said she would make cakes, big cakes, and they wouldn't come out right, and she would throw it away until she had perfected it. And I keep thinking about now, butter is too high for me to make a mistake. But I remember her telling me how she perfected that coconut cake. Now, I know some of y'all are sitting there thinking, oh, I remember a story I need to tell. Samantha's got a blank form that you can complete. We'll put it into the lime green basket. And once it's in the lime green basket, you'll get a chance to tell it. But right now, our next teller is Jen Cleve.
Okay, bear with me. When I heard this theme, the first thing I thought it was my sister Katie. And I adore my sister. One of her most endearing qualities, in my opinion, is her inability to get sayings right. So she will say things like, people shouldn't throw rocks at glass houses. Or she once used the phrase, quick as thieves. One of my favorites was when she looked at me and she said, I can read you like a glove, which was like, it's like a cross between I can read you like a book and it fits like a glove. So that's my favorite. Katie is wildly successful. She has an advanced degree. She manages several people. She's a wonderful wife and mother, very popular. That doesn't change the fact that just last year we found out that Katie, at age 41, believed that Alaska was an island next to Hawaii because that's how it is on the map. So anyway, growing up, I very lovingly refer to Katie as the dumbest smart person I've ever met. And she gives it right back to me because I can be so dumb in my own way. She makes fun of me because I've never been very worldly. I don't understand innuendo. And or double entendre. I don't even know if I'm saying that word right, which was so unfortunate when I was a high school teacher because I wouldn't know the slang for male and female anatomy. And I'd have to call Katie at the end of a day of school and say, like, why were all the boys laughing when I said this? And she would explain it to me. Um, but my worst mistake was actually not in the classroom, it was online. This was in the early 2000s, kind of the dawn of online shopping. And if you're like me and you grew up in the 1900s in Indianapolis, you'll remember that Galleons was sold to Dix.com around this time. So I was shopping online for a sporty gift for my dad. And instead of searching for Dick's Sporting Goods, I didn't search for Dick's Sporting Goods. Instead, I typed in what I thought the URL should be. And so I left out the sporting goods part and I just put .com. And now let me just say, I love the human body. We are created in the image and likeness of God. And I appreciate a tasteful nude as much as the next person. I saw Michelangelo's David in person, a masterpiece, right? When I typed in that URL, that was not a masterpiece. Not tasteful. It was horrific. And I started screaming and trying to shield my eyes while also like trying to close out the window. But every time I closed the window, there were more windows popped up. When the nightmare finally ended, I was left just feeling sick because I was on a work computer. I was sure I was going to be fired for my online activity. So that was 2 decades ago. You can imagine my surprise last year when Dick's Sporting Goods launched a new campaign, click on Dix.com, starring Will Arnett. Maybe you saw where he would say, like, haven't you heard of Dix.com? And I was like, no. I will never shop online at Dick's Sporting Goods because, as my sister Katie would say, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on everybody.
I just want you to know that was not your fault. Because the school district should have been able to block that, okay? Oh, that's hilarious. Okay. You might want to know. I don't know. Coming up, here are stories of life and afterlife of incarceration, featuring India Madison, will be December 1st at 7 p.m. at Golden Hour Books here at 5202 North College. People returning to our city after being incarcerated face many challenges. They'll share firsthand stories about their lives inside prison and what it's like adjusting to life on the outside. Hear the lived experiences of our prison system and learn how you can get involved in the many organizations that provide services both inside and outside of prisons. Let these courageous stories change your perspective and motivate you to act. The event is free, but you might want to make a donation. Text SAI for Storytelling Arts of Indiana to 44321 on your smartphone. That's one thing that's coming up. That's December 1st. Now, December 3rd, a project near and dear to my heart is a Speak Up graduation. It's hosted at the Phoenix Theater Cultural Center at 5:30 p.m. And just like here are stories, these stories can change your heart and your mind. we're partnering with the Corporation for Supportive Housing to host a graduation event for individuals who have journeyed from homelessness to thriving in supportive housing and are now serving as advocates and leaders in the community. So it's called Speak Up Graduation on Wednesday, December 3rd at 5:30 p.m. at Phoenix Theater. You ought to come join us. But I'm going to reach into the lime green basket. Pull out another storyteller. This teller is Ken Ogus. Ken.
We were all seated around the dinner table. My sister Fran, 12 years older than I am, was at the head of the table. And her face was the epitome of frustration and anger. Her eyes were wide, and she was holding a knife. And everybody at the table said, what? Well, it was her birthday. She was 12 years old, and the cake sitting in front of her had icing on it. And she looked at my mother and hissed, "You weren't supposed to put icing on the cake." Oh, my poor sister. She had been trying to lose weight and exercise and feeding on celery sticks and carrot sticks. Little by little, it was coming off. And when it was her turn to say what she wanted for her birthday dessert, her cake for her birthday, she said, I don't even want a cake. The mother said, "Well, look, dear, we've got to have some kind of a cake, something plain." She said, "Fine. How about a bald pound cake?" Okay. And what kind of icing? "No icing, please, no icing." Well, this was quite a challenge. And my mother knew that she had to somehow keep peace in the family. Why, there were brothers, sister, and my dad had to have icing on his cake. Well, the night came. My mother worked in the kitchen to prepare that bald pound cake. And Fran stood at the head of the table, anxious and happy. And mother came out, he turned down the lights, and out came that cake with 12 candles on it. And mother set it down in front of Fran, but the candles were sticking in very thick layers of icing. She said, "No!" And my mother said, Fran, it's gonna be all right." She reached in front of my sister and grabbed the four corners of the cake and lifted. My mother, bless her heart, is very creative. She had taken a shoebox, covered it with aluminum foil, and put a nice thick layer of icing on it. And so she lifted up that icing and set it off to the side. And she said, "Franny, you may cut the cake." And my sister, she was so happy. And the rest of us, while we took icing off the top of that shoebox, put it on our own piece of cake. And I was only 6 months old or so. I was there. And I knew that my sister holding a knife was meaningful. And I heard that story every year for Fran's birthday, even after she left for school. And I asked my mother at some point, I said, "Mom, how do you do it? How do you problem solve? How do you keep peace in the family like that?" She goes, "Kenny, it's a piece of cake."
Yeah, in my household, we would have to make two cakes. Thank you. Listen, my mother was the type of woman who would get up and fix a holiday dinner, and we would eat at noon. And she didn't start cooking like weeks in advance and putting stuff in the freezer. She had an ungodly talent for cooking everything so it all came together at the same exact moment that you needed it. And then as she took the ham out, she put the homemade rolls inside, and we all sat down and ate. Now dinner's almost ready when my father decides he wants breakfast. Now, every woman in this room knows good and God darn well that we do not fix breakfast on the holiday. But he insisted to the point where he moved the pots of vegetables that were cooking on the back of the stove over, set a skillet out for his bacon, made his eggs. I don't know if he made grits or potatoes, had toast, and he was about to take his plate and disappear into his room when he looked over and saw that German chocolate cake my mother had made. Now, my father had taken the spatula where he had used to cook his over easy eggs. There was egg yolk on the end, grease or butter on the end. He took that spatula, he didn't cut the cake like that. He just lopped off the side of it, put it on his plate, and disappeared into his room. So from that time, whenever my mother had to make something for a bake sale or take to somebody's funeral, you didn't take the whole cake. If you didn't make a cake to stay at home, that cake wasn't going to get out of the door in one piece. Now, I know y'all thinking about some more stories. But right now, our next teller is Leandra Radford.
Hello, everyone. How many of you have ever been driving down the street and saw someone holding up a sign that said, "We'll work for food"? Well, I, once upon a time, have worked for cake. Let me tell you how it went. Well, first of all, it was considered work because I knew how important of a task this really is. It was such an important task because I come from a really big family. My grandmother had 8 children, my father being the oldest, and I fall in the line of being her second grandchild. And for a long time, there was just 3 of us. We call ourselves the 3 OGs, the 3 original grandkids. And all the other ones, they just came along maybe 4 or 5 years later. So she doesn't love them as much as she loves us. Well, during the era of the 3 OGs, when we would go to my grandmother's house for the weekend, she would always let us sit in the kitchen and watch her cook her cakes. And she was known all over the city for making her cakes. My favorite was caramel cake. I don't even to this day, I do not typically buy junk food in the store or eat from other people because I consider it to be wasted calories. Because if it's not going to be as good as my grandmother makes, I mean, like, really, what's the point? So, my grandmother, I believe, thought because she set us in the kitchen and allowed us to watch her cook, that in her mind, that was her training and teaching us how to be the next generation of cake makers, right? Well, my job was to lick the bowl. And I didn't really pay attention to how many eggs went in, how much sugar, whatever. And my grandmother, when she does it, I mean, she does it like no store-bought box cakes. She's making from scratch the whole 9 yards. She's made the cake batter and then she makes the icing. And that's my favorite. Oh my God. I'm not even really a cake person, but that icing, I could just eat from the bowl and life is good. And I'm going to say when I turned about 8 years old, I had convinced my mother. Now, this grandmother is my dad's mom, but I had convinced my mother that she needed to go to the store, get all these ingredients because I was going to make a caramel cake and show my grandmother that I was just as good as she was, right? Well, my mother, I don't know why she went along with these shenanigans, but she did go to the store. She got all the ingredients, came back, brought them to me, and I had everything. But I was not even really trying to be my grandmother in the sense of making everything from scratch. A good old yellow box cake was good enough for me. And so I got the cake made, and I was most excited about putting the ingredients together to make a caramel cake. And I have to tell you, this was going to be a surprise for my paternal grandmother, but my maternal grandmother also made caramel cake. Really, really good, but not as good as my other grandmother. So it got to the point where I remembered I was licking this bowl like I was doing an understudy for my PhD or something. But I really didn't pay attention to all the ingredients that went into it. And so I'm like, okay. So I called my maternal grandmother, and she's telling me the ingredients, and I'm stirring, and she was very specific. You have to not let it get too hot, or it's not going to turn out right. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Just give me the ingredients. I got this, right? So I don't got this. I'm stirring and it's looking good. And it gets to the point, like it started to get too hot. And I was like, okay, let me take this off. And I poured it over the cake ever so nicely and thick. And it just started to spread really nice. And I took the knife and I'm going back and forth. And I get to the point where I'm like, yes, this is going to be great. And I put it on the cake. It looks so lovely. And I wanted to let it cool because I knew that that was important as well. And so as the cake was cooling, I called my grandmother and I told her, Granny, when I get to your house this weekend, do I have a surprise for you? You're going to be so proud of me. And I let it cool. I didn't want to taste it because I wanted to take it to her just so perfectly, right? It would have been the next day. So we get to my grandmother's house and it's time to cut this beautiful cake. And I get the knife and I go to cut it. My grandmother's cake never too bad. Um, oh my, it had turned into rock candy. Nobody wanted to eat this cake. Nobody wanted a piece. And I thought, I don't care what they're talking about. I am eating this cake. And I literally had to tear the cake apart and break, literally hit it on the counter to break the icing. But I sucked it and it was not really a piece of cake, but it was still good.